some talking, and that's Shiva. Shiva is going to be talking about from 3 to 1, easier said than done. And that's a great, sounds like a great rhyme and a great Twitter soundbite. You're talking about 3 weeks to 1 week in terms of iterations within a Scrum or Agile development method. So I'll let you. One of the unique things about Shiva is that he speaks 5 different Indian languages, and he's also a foodie. And you said that you drove 10 hours one time to go to a restaurant. I'm wondering, geez, what restaurant would be worth a 10-hour drive? I can't think of very many.
No, it's it's an Indian restaurant actually. So ever since I moved to the US, it was hard to find a good restaurant that served up traditional food, and then we finally had one of my favorite restaurants from back home that opened up a restaurant in California, and so I had to go there. And so it had been years since I'd had it, and so I just was, I'm going, I'm driving. Whoever wants to eat good food, come in. I was going to take my car, which is a sedan, but I ended up getting one of those big vans because I had 14 people, and I drove all 14 of them to this. It was a food mania. So
That's a fun drive. So why don't you dig into from 3 to 1, easier said than done?
Yeah. I actually, after seeing all of these people, I know Phil and I talking, was like, Phil, I don't have any slides. I'm so swamped with work. I don't have any slides. And I feel, is it okay? And we're like, yeah, it's fine as long as you're talking about things. But after seeing all these people come in so prepared and, have fancy presentations, I quickly made a 2 PowerPoint slide. It's just, I'm embarrassed to even call it that, but it's there. I have some tidbits of information, and if it's okay, I'd like to share my screen and present. And I did. I know I purposely left some things out of my tidbit because I know my actual talk might not last 10 minutes, and that I could kind of ease my way into it, and piggybacking off of Rachel's thing that magic happens outside your comfort zone. This is my first time ever speaking in a conference or publicly outside of people that I know and work with every day. So I want to say upfront, if I do make some mistakes, that's what I'm here. Please do point that out to me so I learn and I'll grow better. I've always welcomed positive, constructive feedback. So having said that,
you should be able to share your screen.
Cool, thank you. All right, share it. So before I jump in, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about me. I started my career as a developer, and then I took some time off, and I was a stay-at-home dad for 3 years because my wife took some time off with our first kid, and I was like, I will take some time off with the second one. So I stayed at home, and when I got back, I was trying to get into the job market, and I saw this open QA position, and I applied for it. It's like, okay, let me get into the organization first, and then once I get there, I can easily switch over to being a developer. So I got in, I started doing my QA work, and then I realized that I didn't want to go back to development. I wanted to stay with QA because as a QA person, I was amazed at how, as a developer rather, I was amazed at how siloed you are from the whole understanding the whole business requirement or understanding the whole product. And that as a QA person, you have a nice understanding, a holistic view of the entire product and how it's supposed to work and how the users use it and all of that. And I was amazed, and I was also able to kind of use my development skills where I go, because I started writing automation, and I felt like the developer in me was also kind of satiated with all of this code that's writing. But then I was also amazed at all these opportunities that opened up after I became a QA. So that's a little bit about me. And having said that, this talk, there isn't a whole lot to it. The intention here is that I'm just going to share some of my experiences that I had in the last year. So I just moved into CrowdStreet, and that's where I work. It's been exactly a year and 8 days since I moved to CrowdStreet. It's CrowdStreet is a company that does commercial real estate investment using crowdsourcing. And it's a startup, and so I moved in. The CTO of that company is somebody I've worked with before, and so she wrote me in, because we were trying to scale and get a good quality process in place. So me and my best friend from 12 years, he is my boss. We kind of got in and we did a little bit of process changes. We brought in some new tools, and then we, basically that's the whole gist of the story, is from 3 to 1. So when we first came in, this is what we inherited. So there was a regression suite that ran for 6 hours. It was built on top of a codeless automation tool. And before I start, I want to say I am not here to talk for or against any automation tools, or so I have nothing against codeless automation tools, and it's just talking through my experiences. So fair warning. So the regressions, when we came in, it was running for 6 hours. There was only one person who knew how to write tests with that tool. Nobody was seeing what was the report of those results. There's no CI/CD pipeline. If you had to run against multiple environments, you had to go into that the browser, log into their server, change the baseline URL, and then you can kick off the test. So that's what we inherited when we came in. And then so our goal was, obviously it's a startup company, it's a small workforce, so we had to kind of get a good quality process in place, and we couldn't afford a bigger budget. We couldn't afford to hire more people. There was 2 other people we could add. And so coming back to the earlier talk where we talked about how do we get people who care, right? How do you find people who care? We went through extensive interview. One thing we did was we put in a good job description of exactly what you as a QA engineer would be doing if you were to join CrowdStreet. And once we had folks come in for the interview, we told them, what do you expect of this job? And if that kind of aligned with what we were saying, and we felt that person was easy to work with, then that's how we went with people, and we definitely got a great group of guys. So our first job was to figure out how to get so we went with the reverse pyramid here, right? You have the pyramid where you have the integration tests are like at the very last. So you start with the unit test and you kind of go build, and then the end-to-end test. We were like, we have to go the reverse pyramid way here, because there's basically no other way to get quality. So we started writing our end-to-end tests first. We didn't have a lot of unit tests. So we like, okay, we need to get something going so that we can ensure that our primary workflow is not impacted. So we did that, and then we slowly changed process because we had a lot of our engineering team was being constantly had to context switch because business folks had questions on how certain things worked or how there were defects. So we put a process in place, and we kind of filtered all of that information through one person so that the engineering team is there to do what they have to do. And then we started working on our plan of making sure that we can release faster, because we were doing it's technically 2-week sprints, but then there was a week spent just trying to make sure that things are working, and we were testing. And so what we ended up with was we have a full fledged regression suite that runs under 30 minutes using the Cypress framework. The entire engineering team, from developers to QA, everybody writes tests. Our reports are hosted in AWS, and there's a link. And so our CEO actually looks at it every now and then. So that's how much visibility we made sure. And we got a CI/CD pipeline using Bitbucket, and then we try to do in sprint automation. The percentage is always a slippery slope. 90% of what will always be the question, right? I mean, we try to make sure that 90% of the user stories that come in have at least the critical paths covered through automation. And we don't worry about the edge cases that much if that's not something that a user is going to hit a lot, right? And then we always make sure that we definitely automate any bugs that were reported from the end user, because that means that that situation is being used a lot. So to get from here to there, I think it kind of is a culmination of all the other things that we've talked earlier, where obviously we said about we need people who care, and the fact that come on, move away from my screen a little bit. Just a second. I had some notes written, and my Zoom screen is hiding that. Yeah. Yeah, it's about the people that we need people who care, and the fact that you need everybody aligned towards having the common goal of being able to deliver quality software and being able to deliver faster. And so to deliver faster, we had to build a robust regression suite that would make sure that we catches any bugs, right? Because we don't want to spend a week testing. So now we are able to ship the day we finish our sprint. And one of the biggest, there was obviously the framework that helped, the automation part of it, but then there was also process changes where we said the definition of done prior to when we joined, the definition of done was when a developer finished coding and it's pushed over to QA, right? And then doesn't matter if the story ends up on the QA bucket on the last day of the sprint, there's 10 stories, you still kind of have to push them. So you sit there and you test, you slog your way through it. And so one of the bigger changes that was done as an engineering organization was we changed the definition of done. The definition of done is when a story is completely tested, right? Be it automated or through manual testing, but that's the definition of done, which meant that we were estimating our stories much better, which helped definitely for us from getting to that 1 week process, right? So we were like, okay, so now we know how much we can take, and we have to ensure that it's completely tested, it's the critical paths are automated, and that estimate is included in the original story. And so now we are obviously much more effective. We're getting things out faster. Any bugs reported are being held, and our hot fixes, there used to be a lot, has now come down, and to an extent we are even calling them minor releases, because that's what they've turned out to be now, is just minor adjustments to requirements that people have asked. So again, the intention of this is that to kind of communicate the fact that like-minded people with minor process tweaks can go a long way in ensuring that you can get to faster deliveries and faster quality release cycles sooner rather than later. It took us about exactly a year to get there, but then you need to have the alignment of different people within the team, right? And that's one of the reasons we picked Cypress, is because it's JavaScript based, which means that there wasn't a big steep learning curve for the developers, and then they were able to start, they were able to contribute right off the bat, because ours was a React based application, and so we integrated our Cypress framework with the front end, which meant that any backend calls that the front end was making, we already had access to. We didn't have to write our own things, and we were able to kind of piggyback off most of the stuff. And we ended up doing a lot of our setup and tear down with APIs, and only the actual system under test was what we was done via the UI, and so on and so forth. So that's about all I had, and I hope and pray to God that you have at least one question for me. Otherwise, this whole thing would fall flat on its face.
No, that was great, Shiva. Does anybody have questions for Shiva? I think it was a great talk, 3 to 1. It rhymes too. So, any good questions?
I have a quick one. What was the biggest challenge that you encountered? The path to progress slide we're viewing now is blowing my mind. That going from 6 hours to 30 minutes is amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there were some times along the way that it seemed like it might not happen.
The biggest challenge we had was obviously getting everybody to accept what the definition of done, which meant that we're going slower, right, than what we would like. But I think, and then we had to kind of advocate for the fact that we're still, one of the biggest challenge that we still I haven't figured out how to solve, which is what I asked Irina up front, was the fact that we still can't figure out how to set aside time for regression maintenance, because that's bound to happen. Things change, regressions break, and that's still one of the biggest challenges that we as one of the Q architects is yet to solve, is how to figure out how to make time for that, right? We convinced people that we have to go slow, and everybody's seeing the results of that, in the fact that we're not putting a lot of hot fixes. We're able to go much faster. We're able to push code much faster, but there's still things that we do outside of our regular work cycle, you know, a couple of QAs to kind of maintain our regression suite to make sure that, you know, like I said, it's better to have no automation than flaky automation, and I totally agree with that, right? I would honestly, when we were in the office, any day our tests like ran 100% all greens, we go out for a beer because it's so hard. Right? There's something or the other that will always happen, right? Our best bet is if we can get, you know, 98% success rate. That's what we always go for. I think that's a realistic explanation, but that's probably the biggest challenge is to kind of get everybody to align with the thought process that yes, we go slow, but then in the long term, that's actually going to benefit us. And we got the buy-in to the most part, but we're still struggling to find some time, you know, to make people realize that automation test maintenance is a thing.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Shiva. You did a great talk for your first time. And I don't know if you remember, but Rachel mentioning that a year ago, she also gave her first talk, so that we hope that you can come back again.